Special call meeting. Today is Thursday, March the 6th. The time is 9:05 a.m. For a special call meeting, and we'll welcome those who are in attendance and welcome to those who are watching us live. We have a couple items on our agenda. The first one is Resolution 2025-030601, Letter of Support Solid Waste Grant. Mr. Coffey?
That's a request from the county, and we certainly, as staff, agree that that's a good idea. It's a grant application for a chipper, and so they're not asking city commission necessarily to participate in that actual application other than providing a letter of support. We rent chippers, and we do that during the storms, and so it's actually fairly, this is not a chipper, it's an incinerator, as I understand it, but said that, but that's a better solution for us long-term, and certainly it's something, it's a good idea, and something we support, and asking you guys to endorse the city's support of it.
I'd move for approval of Resolution 2025-030601.
Thank you, sir. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Thank you, ladies. Any questions or comments?
Actually, we do need to get that over there to them today.
Hearing none, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, likewise, motion carries. Want me to sign this one? You? Mhm. The next item on our agenda is a budget kickoff discussion. Mr. Coffey?
Thank you, guys. We appreciate everybody being here today. So the kickoff this year, what I've tried to figure out is I've done a lot of self-assessing, and I really ultimately through today's meeting and as we go through particularly the early part of the budget season, where we can make adjustments easier and incorporate things. We really, and I talked to Lee a little bit about how to articulate it, but we really want to self-evaluate each other. We want to self-evaluate our performance as a group, and that means with the board also. We want to, have high expectations on ourselves, and I know because you all verbalize them to me, and we want to do well. And so with that, we want to make sure we're getting each other's feedback, that we're getting direction from the commission. I think that's critical. And so that's ultimately kicking off of that idea. Well, and at the end of the day, where's the city want to be in 5, 10 years? We're operationally, not just the community. So when we were looking at our strategic plan, it's easy to get distracted into the bigger picture and look at it from the community perspective. But really, I mean, what are we doing in this building long term? It was easy, and I'll get into this, but a little bit, but when I transitioned into the city manager role, it was easy for me to see the low-hanging fruit of things that I knew operationally we needed to do. And I talked about those a lot with you all, and I was able to mention those, and I feel like we've done all of those in a sense, and I say it like that not to be braggadocious, but because those are the things that we needed to do. And so when my father passed in November, when we came back to that meeting that Monday, I had been gone, and I hadn't interacted with any of the management team much, very little. I'd been gone. I took a week off, and we had that agenda. You all did some very complicated things that were some very deep subjects. Now, I was well aware of them, and I certainly knew that we were bringing them to you all as agenda items, and I understood the subjects and fully endorsed them. But in terms of how they were presented and the way the staff met with you and presented them at those meetings, the 150 corridor, the Waterline Commission, those were some fairly heavy subjects that we presented at that meeting.
And what that demonstrated was, okay, we kind of got to where we needed to be when I became city manager, in that we want a productive department head team. Those staff members are critically important, so that if you have an HR question, you have an HR director in play that's able to help. If you have a police issue, you got a police chief in play, finance director. These folks are fully adapted to their roles, fully integrated into their roles. So now, but what happens next as a city operationally? So that's kind of the floor that I'm trying to get through, wrestle with in my own mind. Where are we missing staff? What's our next progression organizationally? Right? So then, saying that, the presentation is kind of geared around asking that question, right? And that's not always clear, but I want you to store that in your mind. And if you hear something along the way, or if you want to interject something as an idea comes in your head, interrupt us, and we'll take notes and we'll work through that in the future if that's necessary. But that's ultimately the goal, and that's hard for me to articulate, because we are doing self-evaluation, really. Like, what are we doing and where are we going to be as an organization, not just a community? So then we're planning with we begin with that end in mind. So we need your all's definition around those things. So we're starting right now with needing to know where we're going to be in 10 years as a city organization, right? So then we got inspired a little bit as I began to do this conversation, by the training I went to with Matthew Mitchell, and I bought his book. It's on your desk. Ultimately, the question of a self-evaluation is what we're trying to do is prepare. We're trying to prepare for the future. And the only way you succeed in the future, or you win in the future, as you all define winning, is we have proper preparation now as an organization. That has to be systemic. Communities as well. So when I'm saying that, you all have to lead through the community, not just the organization. So that's a heavier lift for you guys. And so a little bit of that sounds challenging to you all, but it's going to be, and you'll see some other places where it is a little bit challenging to you guys to figure out how you all react as individual elected officials in the future too. And that's good. So the book is important. It teaches us about preparation, right? And as we got into the book, Melanie identified this Commerce Lexington. They're having their 25 Emerge. He is actually the opening orator at that conference next week. It's next Tuesday morning. He will speak, and he will present some of the concepts in the book. If you all want to go, we'll try to set that up. I know it's late, but this is a bigger conference. It's not just about this teaching, but he is the keynote opening speaker. And so if you would like to go up there and hear him, it's not a basketball coachy thing. It's not that. It's about leadership. And as he explained, that's one of the reasons he transitioned away from coaching, was because he realized that there's a bigger void in our space that we're in Central Kentucky. And so he was trying to address that a little bit too with his future plan. So then I heard this quote, and if you all were at the KLC thing, I really have caught on this because we deal with this every single day. And it's the quote at the bottom, but it's really a reflection of the statement I made before that, which is on the screen. As a city grows, our workload grows, and it gets more complex, and our issues become more complex to manage, and we're managing them. We're managing changes in all kinds of things in our community, and ultimately what that becomes is a challenge to administer the city. That's a challenge in the technical aspects of administration. But what happens when we do that is we don't lead. And so I'm focusing on leadership for you guys, because we need you all to fill that void as staff, right, for us. So we get distracted and can't always lead, and which is the sentence, and I'm going to read it again for everybody. And this is true for you guys as well. As we get complaints, they begin to overburden our leadership, and they begin to mute our leadership, right? They had become so focused on the aches and pains of the system that they had become thrown off course by the complaints. They had stopped supplying vision or had burned out fighting the resistance. They had ceased to be the strength in the system. In short, they had forgotten to lead. That is a hard thing for local elected officials, because you all get, the more you're in the environment, you get that feedback from citizens, and sometimes that can be overwhelming. And I just want to acknowledge that, right? So then the book, going back to the book, preparation, the rewards of being a prepared leader or with prepared leadership is 3 key points. Partnership. When you're prepared as a leader, you're able to build trust. Trust in the constituents that are out there, trust in your partnerships that are out there. Your problem-solving skills are enhanced. So when you're prepared, you know what you're doing, you have a plan of attack, you're better able to react to that. Then perseverance. The more prepared you are, the more in shape you are, the more in condition you are to continue that fight for whatever that issue is. So look at the water plant, for example. We started on that in 2002, and we didn't finish till 2017. That took a lot of perseverance by the city along the way. Different city commissions had to make different decisions along the way, right? That took a lot of oomph from the commission. So then winning, we need you guys to help us define what that looks like for us as staff. And I'm not asking you to just start blurting things out, but like think about that over the next few times. And as you think of things, come back and tell me. But that is the direction we need from you guys. We need to understand what winning means for us. And here's an and we persevered as a community, not just the hospital as an organization, because they did need partnership, they did need support in problem solving. And as a community, this was resolved, and ultimately that led to the picture that you see. That perseverance led to the image on the screen. That represents a $100 million investment in downtown, right? 3,000 employees downtown. That fixed income downtown for the businesses, where that is a budget that is going to be spent, cooked into the downtown economy, right? So that was a critical piece to our downtown. That couldn't have happened without preparation. Preparation like beginning the land use ideas and the concepts in the downtown master plan ultimately help guide the city to actually end up with the Walker Hall property, which helps them migrate away from the west side of 4th Street and begin that transition of redevelopment on the west side and some of those ideas that are also in the master plan. So the preparation of beginning the master plan in 2017 begat fruit in 2024 by the picture on the screen. That's 7 years worth of effort, right? So then mindset matters. So I'll go back to the definition of win. That is a fixed mindset. When you use the word win, that is a fixed mindset. That is getting to a specific spot and then maintaining that particular position. We have to shift to the growth mindset, which is improvement, right? Nothing is ever completed. It's always dynamic. It's changing. So we want to switch our mindsets to not being the best, but being our best, our version of our best, which is always changing, which can be improved. It's a growth mindset. It's not about making the community the most populous community in Kentucky. It's not about that kind of growth. It's about intellectually doing the best we can as a community, right? And that ultimately, that mindset ultimately starts with our attitude towards each other and the system and our effort, right? And so we as staff need to continue to see that from you as our leaders, right? And I hope that makes sense. So all those things, these principles are in the book, and I really valued the opportunity to learn his experience that he was able to communicate through coaching and some specific instances that made him lean into the ideas of this for communities too, which is really, it's actually profound. He didn't necessarily seek it out, but it did come to him. So I appreciated having the opportunity to hear him speak about the book, and I encourage you to read it. And if you want to go Tuesday, we'll try to figure out a way to get you there. So now, with where we're at, so let's go back to how we win as a community and what we're doing and how we begin winning more. We improve our outcomes. We got to first acknowledge the problems, and the problems are not necessarily there. We see a lot of symptoms and call them problems, but ultimately, communities are somewhere. And you've heard me say this if you're around me, but this is true, right? And we can't lose sight of this first statement. Communities are somewhere on the population spectrum, which is population versus which. The population, your land size doesn't change. It creates density, right? So you're either getting less dense or more dense. So that's a little bit of a difference between pure population growth, right? So then the density results in changes that impact the city's administration and our workload. So when you look at the chart on the right, that is the population of Bull County since 1990. Which is interesting because what you see is normal growth. That has been true for Bull County for many, 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 many years. It's just a straight line. It's about a 1%, just under a 1% growth, and that's extremely consistent. And if you go backwards even further, that line is still on that trajectory. We've never really had a pure flattening of our population. So as that chart is going up, and our land size in Bull County has remained the same, specifically the county, all of us, then our density is changing, right? So our density in Bull County is we are 25% more dense than we were 30 years ago. Think about that for a second now. So that means that our police have different issues. Our fire has different issues. So the pressure we feel to make changes with our police and changes with our fire and new fire stations on the west side, this chart is why those symptoms are bearing out. So what we have to do is prepare for those changes in advance. We have to be aware of that those are coming, and we have to consider those as leaders. The societal change pressure causes political pressure on you guys because your community is adapting to those change. So you have neighbors with new neighbors. You have housing that is being asked, and planning and zoning is dealing with it right now on Bergen Road, dealing with a development immediately adjacent to another development. So we saw how that played out on the opposite side of Shakertown Road with the Sharp development, how much pressure you guys felt from that, and how much consternation that we had at planning and zoning and at the commission level. That's a reflection of that chart. It's not necessarily a decision that the city commission is seeking to make, right? So when I say the societal change pressure causes issues, there's a need for more revenue. The expenses are growing because we have to have more police and fire and public works and those things. the expectations of the new community members mixed in with the old community, there's change in what their expectations are, right? And then also, they just become more complex because now we're looking, instead of just a simple quarter-acre lot next to quarter-acre lots, you're looking at different densities with adjacencies to other densities. And so what Josh and I spent time talking about this week was, how do we plan for that? So an RM3 development immediately adjacent to RM1 development, which was the Sharp development, does our planning and zoning regulate, well, so your tighter density is actually what is affordable now for the developers. So we're going to see an increasing trend towards that density versus the traditional density that you all originally had in your houses, typically with where you live, right? The lots that you all had, those aren't going to be recreated because developers can't afford to build the roads for that density at that size house, right? So that's a complex issue. So does our planning and zoning steer us towards transitions in those land uses so that one neighbor isn't looking at something that he's not used to looking to fully? And how do those things align? I don't know about that, but those are complex issues. And that happens because of the chart on the right. That's true for Kentucky. Kentucky, including Danville, is under pressure for population growth, partly because of our resources that we have. We have power and water here, and we have transportation features here that aren't overtaxed compared to, say, Nashville. So you're getting pressure into Kentucky from Ohio, Cincinnati. You're getting more pressure further south. You're getting more pressure from the south towards the north. So Kentucky's getting squeezed in the middle. What's at risk? It's at risk in Bull County also, which is, it's a threat to our culture and character in Kentucky. Like, so how do we feel about that? And what do we do in Bull County to maintain our system and our local community in Danville? And I keep saying the county just strictly because we're all in one boat. How do we maintain our character when we understand that those pressures exist and that they're happening around us? Because I think all of us want to maintain the character of our homes and our neighborhoods and our environment. It's a comfortable thing for us. That's why we chose to be where we're at, typically. Then I already mentioned the last point. So those things on the screen are what we're trying to react to as a city. So when we're doing our self-evaluation, what do we need to do to react to this better? You know, I named one granular thing inside of planning and zoning. Maybe we need to talk about that with Michaela or whoever's there with Josh and let them go brainstorm about how to handle that. And maybe there's necessary changes to the zoning ordinance in the future sometime, not comp plan issues, not general land use issues, but how you implement those changes, which is those transitions and those things. So it's a lot to consider. So then for us, as we start that process and considering these things, so this slide is when we're talking about our things as staff, I know for me, when I'm talking to the chief, when I'm talking to Lee, when I'm talking to Randy, this is in the backdrop of my mind, this dynamic, right? So the answers I give them, I try to give them with that in mind, okay? So then looking back over the last 5 years, I want to communicate how successful Danville as a community has been. So we don't champion our successes enough. We do want to focus on organizing ourselves for success, but we got to look back first. We want to recognize our progress. And so what I did a map for you this morning in about 5 minutes, and it's got a bunch of yellow words on it, right? Some of them are identified on the screen. But in the last 5 years through today, you're dealing with the sewer expansion on the north. You're working with Mercer County Sanitation District on establishing sewer on Gwen Island Road. You're upgrading the Spears Creek pump station right now as we speak. You've put the lagoon in about 8 years ago. That's on the screen there. You're doing a water line installation with a grant on 2168. There's no water. between Bergen Road and Harrodsburg Road. You're putting you just received a grant for a pedestrian trail there. You're dealing with an annex on the north side. You're doing some development planning with the Lexington Avenue corridor, including the potential transportation changes and things that are administrative that Josh is working with the state on. You got stormwater work going on in Streamland. You have parks planning at the fairgrounds, water expansion in Perryville, sewer rehab in Perryville. Your downtown master plan is active. We're planning a site visit to some hotels with Melanie now to investigate what those would look like and add definition to that idea. The EDA just acquired the property west of the bypass, 200 acres, the Reading track. The EDA is getting access to the Norfolk Southern site with the roadway development, and you now own that as the EDA. Sanitary sewer affects everybody south of Main Street. So when Marshall's talking about that Lebanon Road Phase 3 sewer project, that affects every sewer customer south of downtown, south of Main Street, which is the green line. You got transportation safety, where we got the $11 million grant for the bypass planning. Josh, we were able to do that last year when we went to Washington. We have the hope of getting the safer, I think it's called, I forget what the new acronym is. It used to be a RAISE grant. I think it's a BUILD grant now for the Second Street corridor. That's our primary objective when we go back to Washington this year. The May development is on the south side. You have Center Estates on the south side. You can see the dirt being moved. We're putting a sewer line in from Ball's Branch to connect to that. Hopefully that's on the agenda Monday. Sewer plant Phase 2, we're getting ready to react whenever there's a demand for that. Transportation on the east side. You were doing active development planning on the south side. You got sewer rehab in Junction City going on, and the airport's being addressed. We just, if you've been down there and you'll remember, the new access road's been moved. That opens up everything on the air side for the airport to expand their on-air offerings, including new hangars, but also they're getting a new hangar on the east side. They're doing their lighting projects. They're doing those things at the airport. So the community is addressing comprehensive work 360 degrees around the city. There's various sidewalk projects. The state's working on Wilderness Trail. So there is a significant amount of infrastructure investment and guidance from this community by the city and others. So I hope that resonates with you. So looking back, you've had a very successful 5-year run. Now, what do we do in the next 5 years? What's next? As these things start to go off of the books and as we move forward with some of these things, what are the things that staff is not thinking of? These are the things I can see, but what are, and those can be as minuscule as code enforcement changes, which is what Commissioner Peake was talking to me about the other day. How do we improve our code enforcement? We don't want that to lax, right? Consider all of those aspects. And I want you to take a minute to breathe a little bit, because look at the things you're addressing through our budgeting. So then, saying that, what we have used as our goals is the strategic plan that y'all did in 2023. So there's a copy of it on your desk, just to remind you. When you go through it and glance at it, you'll see a lot of those things we've done and we're working on, which is, some of those are on the sheet that I just talked about, right? So I feel like we're doing things and we're trying. I believe staff is hearing you and we're trying to react. But I want to confirm that we're hearing you, right? So then in my speak, I took the strategic plan and I've tried to boil it down into some different concepts that are the same, but simplify it for me. The first goal that is our goals are based on what we see in the strategic plan. The first one I identified It's just the things you all talked about was maintaining an environment in which satisfaction is high through good investments in quality of life, infrastructure, and the support of economic vitality. We need to make the place safe and secure, right? So when we are, as staff, when we're waking up today, that idea is what is one of our drivers. And I boiled that sentence out of the strategic plan for me just as an individual, right? And we're looking at to accomplish that, leadership is required, and it must be established and maintained as whatever that true north is, right? Which we do, and we need your all's feedback in order to maintain that direction, right? And I know we get it, and I'm urging that, but at the same time, we know we get that. I'm not trying to be, that's not a criticism. I'm just trying to encourage you all to continue to do that, continue to tell us. The city staff works in partnership with you. And I want to make sure that's affirmed. Some folks look at us as not conflicting with you a lot. Well, that just means that we are trying our best to listen to you, what you are telling us, right? We're not going to bring something to you that you all don't want us to do, right? So if we're astute as staff members and we are hearing you along the way and you're providing good communication in your leadership, then there shouldn't be any conflict. We shouldn't be bringing you something that is catching you off guard, that makes you recoil. So that is a demonstration of miscommunication and lack of partnership between the staff and the city commission sometimes. Now, is that always true? No, because there's some subjects that you all need to debate and you all need to conflict over in order to achieve a solution. It's totally normal to work through those, but I want staff not to have conflict with the commission. I want us to do what you all are telling us. That's my goal, right? But we do need to, now the next sentence I do want to say, because I want you all to think about this, we need to do a deeper dive into the city's operations, program planning, and our organizations. What is our weakness? But that is not staff-driven. I want to know that from your all's perspective sometimes too. And I know you all try to get, but I'm just reaffirming that we want that from you, okay? The next one is we want to achieve a higher performing team. There's a common theme amongst cities that are perceived as successful, and that is that there is significant collaboration among a professional team and the elected officials. So when we have a high-performing team, the city commission then can fulfill your naturally identified, and they're labeled as the 6 natural roles of governance. So what you all are doing when you're actually fulfilling your roles as elected officials when you're walking around town and when you're coming to the commission meetings. And these are the 6. There was an article I sent out a couple years ago that identified these, and I want to go back to them here as just a reminder. We need your all strategic vision. You all are for the elected, for the citizenry, you're the trusted stewards of the government, right? You all are listening to the constituents that call you, right? You all then therefore want to be a conduit between those residents and us for services if that's miscommunicated. So I'll take a garbage can issue this week. We had one of you all sent me a garbage can complaint that we'd been dealing with, and once we got the complaint, I didn't do anything. I just told staff downstairs, Miranda, Ms. Collins made one call, and it was resolved. I don't know what the breakdown was, but you all serving in that role is an important piece of confirming to the citizen that we're being good stewards. In addition to that, being a community builder, one of you all, as expressed in the article, is the community builder. Somebody on the board is the person trying to bring everybody together. That's a natural elected official role. And then, and additionally, you all are all decision makers. So you all vote things up or down. That's a natural role. And then finally, you all provide me oversight, us oversight as staff. And so if we're a good team, then you can more effectively do those 6 things. And that's my goal. Just so you know, I want to confirm that. So the next thing is maintain good external communication to achieve better public awareness and understanding. It is very easy for us to administer and get bogged down in the work and not communicate well outwardly. So we've got Melanie. She's worked very hard in maintaining beginning the newsletter process, getting the website renovated. We are active, communicating outwardly on social media. We try those things as a city organization. I don't know what else we can do there necessarily because we're not the newspaper, right? And I'm not saying the newspaper needs to be sitting everywhere, but at the same time, we are communicating in the ways that we're allowed to communicate. Melanie and Josh did a podcast yesterday, and that'll be out soon. So we're trying to do some of those things, right? Here's the catch, though. The third space communication by you all, and I want to encourage you to understand that that's okay. And the third space is critical for civic engagement. It's critical for society to confirm for you guys, and it helps communication for you guys. And I don't know necessarily how to coach you into that. That's something intuitive that you just have to understand how to do. But it is the origin of it. And let's go back and I'll read my slide. Was the book written in '89, the Great Good Place, which is really the idea that social interaction doesn't just occur in the meeting, and communication doesn't occur just in this building, and it doesn't occur on social media, and it doesn't just occur because Melanie produced a news article for email. It doesn't. Those things aren't necessarily how you communicate. It's talking to the group that's at the hub on the bypass when you go in there as elected officials, taking 2 minutes and addressing them and communicating what we're doing as a city if they ask, taking the time to do that. So the examples are coffee shops, local dining places, libraries, parks, community centers, community events. Those things are the things identified in number 2, which is their neutral ground, their leveling spaces. It's a good place for social interaction, and they're accessible and inviting. So then at a commission meeting, when you're talking about you're on TV and you got a microphone and you guys are on the podium, that is not a level playing field for someone necessarily that's just wanting to find out about the downtown master plan, right? So being cognizant to take a minute to talk about some of those things is reasonable. And I just want to encourage that. That is a part of the city's communication outward, and that can only originate from you all. I can do it, but it's not the same. And so I just want to make sure I verbalize that for you. The next thing is constant for us is improvement in that economic vitality. That takes many different things. Relationships are necessary for community development. You have to have successful communications and partnerships. We try to maintain a relationship with everybody that is active doing things in the community, from CJ May property to the Ron Fath property to the north side. Those relationships are critical. And then the next point for economic vitality is we want to pursue excellence, not perfection. And perfection is an endpoint. Excellence is a continual change, continual improvement. We want a growth mindset. successes including the recruitment of industries, commercial business development, and people, but the city commission can't create the jobs, and that's misunderstood. You're not doing the development. You're not doing those things. You're inviting a space where individuals are willing to invest and take risk so that those jobs are created in your space. Economic development requires engagement. It requires activity. It requires action. You can't just wait for the guy to call on the phone. The city has to be proactive. We have to have our staff being proactive, including the city manager role is critical. And so if you'll remember 4 or 5 years ago, I talked a lot about that. In today's society, folks the city manager can't just be an administrative person in the room working with Lee on the budget. You have to, the people need to have that point of contact so that when they need something from the city commission, they have that someone they can call. And so Melanie and I work very diligently on trying to maintain and engage with those people that are thinking about or considering spending money in the community. The statement, the city must engage. The developers are coming inside of the city. And so if there's somebody going in the county, that's fine. But when they're coming into the city, they're wanting to interact with the city. And that is local economic development. That is local responsibility. And so some of the confusion is that the next statement is all developers are local people. Why are they local? Because they're spending money locally. It don't matter where their corporate office is. They're local developers. Or it doesn't matter where their house is, right? They're local developers. Not to, I would argue that Mr. May and Mr. Pfaff have spent more money than anybody in Danville County, and neither one of them live here over a 25, 30-year period between sewer infrastructure, roadway development, water development, job creation, retail supply, meeting the demand, which spurs other supply development. That engagement with people like that are critical, and they're local. They are local developers. So, but in order to do that, the pressure on the city, and we've heard some of the talk going around us, but the city, organizationally, the way I see it, we have to be more directly engaged as a city government inside of that space when it's in the city. Now, that's an important thing. When it's in the city has to have direct contact in the building. We have to be steering them towards Josh, Marsh, all these aspects of their development. So Melanie's role needs to steer more towards direct economic development. That is not in conflict with your EDC necessarily. But we have to be engaged in that. And the city manager has to be involved in economic development in order for us to, because we don't have a bunch of staff doing specific things, and we still have the EDC. And so like Melanie and I have to be focused on that and have to be interactive with that. And when a developer comes in and they're wanting to talk about a roadway, that's a city issue. That is a direct city issue. That is not a third-party issue. So the city has to be positioned to be directly engaged in that activity, right? So for example, the May property out there, when we're crossing that gas line, the city had to be willing to accept the conditions for those two people to agree. That means the city had to be directly engaged along the way for us to help them negotiate what each other could work with, those two people, because Kinder Morgan is in the community and so is CJ May. So we're trying to navigate that as a city because that's a city street. And ultimately, then that means you guys, through policies previously established, give Josh direction on what he's supposed to do there. And it's critical for us to be directly involved with that. You can't farm that out. You can't farm out the geotech report and analysis and the phase one and the things tied to the expansion of that property on that side of the road. You just can't farm that out. Not inside of the city, right? So then the activities, though, that complement that internal development is the external part. That's your regional recruitment efforts and the efforts of the EDC to recruit industry and jobs into our footprint, right? So there's a marriage there, there's a partnership there, and we've got to make sure that we're trying to communicate that and we're trying to address that effectively. But we have to acknowledge our role in that as a city because that is happening inside of the city, right? Other things is what the cities, we're really, and I won't read this word for word to you, but really we are as staff focused on three things at all times. The way I have boiled it down, we're focused on infrastructure through engineering, business development with Melanie and our finance and those things, and our workforce development. What the police and fire do is all tied to business development. They're making the community safe. They're providing those services that are necessary for a business to be to achieve vitality here, right? Workforce development is not as simple as training. We get bogged down into that idea, and we just go back and we think that we've got to do a job fair and do training. Workforce development, we have to acknowledge that 80 million people are retiring, 20 million people are in the middle. 20 million people, I feel the pressure by the number of people that are calling me asking for advice. I can feel that pressure. And now there's 80 million people coming, but they don't know what they're doing yet. They're not fully trained. Some of them are in college. Some of them are still in high school. So we have to acknowledge that societal shift with that pressure. And so workforce development is recruiting middle managers to our community so that our next generation can have some training. Recruiting some more of that 20 million people to be here to supplement the 80 million people that's retiring, because you can't train up 20 years of experience or 15 years of experience. You just can't train that up necessarily in a 6-month period. The technical skills when we're recruiting an industry, when we're getting that industry here, that is workforce training, because we want to make those resources available so that those young folks can get that specific job or be a welder for that company. So workforce development is not as simple, and sometimes we get bogged down in communities like Danville where we don't really know necessarily what to do, so we just do we just do training. But ultimately, at the end of the day, we got to get people to move here. We got to get people to stay here. We got to get our young folks to see opportunity here, and when they graduate college, to stay here, right? That's workforce development also. So then in summary, these are the points. I don't know why the 23 one decided to jump up half the page, and constant improvement did too. So I'm sorry those bullet points don't line up. But that's really it. I mean, that's the presentation today. That's all I had. I wanted to talk about that with you. I wanted to verbalize that with you. I wanted to sell us on what we were doing a little bit. I wanted to sell you guys on what I want and want to identify for you all to how you can help us, right? And so that's really the budget presentation today, is just talking through what I just did. And I know that was a lot of words from me, but what's your all's reaction to all those things?
Any comments from the commission?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think those are all good points that would work for the city or practically anywhere. It's gonna take some thinking and, to come up with some of the things you're looking for, but, I've had a few pop in my head. So, yeah, I think it's a good starting place anyway. It's a 10,000 foot sort of view, and I think that's where you need to start most of the time anyway.
He said it, Commissioner Cottle said it popped into his head, so I did a little retake on that. But what popped into my head was, this has been great. We probably should take this strategic work plan and walk through that and sort of identify what's been completed, what's in the progress, and what hasn't been started, and look at those categories of activities as well. Some of them were already in what you did today, but I'm sure there's some things in this work plan that we need to look at and say, hey, we've already done A, B, and C. We need D, E, and F in progress, and then we've got several things that have not been started. And then, as a part of our budgetary process, set aside monies, opportunities to complete those things that have been started. Those that are in progress, identify also how we can complete those within a certain time frame. And then those who have not been started, maybe the ones that we thought were for the last part of this plan, how do we get those things kicked off? For example, I keep looking at the lot across the street. And I keep, in my presentations of Government 101, when I get asked the question, well, we're going all the way down to the corner. We just haven't arrived there yet. And so we need a plan for, which staff is working on a plan for, I say from Main Street to Walnut Street, for example. And that hotel slash civic.
Town center.
Town center, yeah. So that would be an approach for me, is to look at those things and say, okay, what's next in moving some of those things forward? I know staff's already working on some of those things, but I think it's important that all 5 of us commissioners know what the status is of all of those different things as well. Okay?
Yeah, I like that. And I just want to acknowledge, too, that we have such an exceptional team and staff, and you guys did a great job following this strategic work plan. And we want to retain our exceptional staff as well. And I look forward to reviewing what's been completed, which you have a long list of what's been completed so far. So thank you for your teamwork.
And we could almost say the same thing for the downtown master plan as well, is that there are things that are, well, remember, people thought that we were doing the streetscape project, and that was the downtown master plan.
Yeah.
We have lots of other things, so it'd be nice to have a discussion to refresh ourselves about the status of some of those things as well.
Those are Earl sidewalks, just ask anybody.
Yeah.
That's another thing that I've tried to attack from various angles is communication, both with you guys and also with the public about the perceptions that they have, like that was your sidewalk, and the whole thing is being Earl-driven. And you make a good point. We talk about a lot of stuff, like you and I will talk about something that you've got on your mind, and if your sense is that nobody's really in favor of it, you don't bring it up because it's a waste of the commission's time. So
Right.
that makes sense to me, but some people just think we do whatever you want, and so I don't know, I've not figured out a good way to I guess, make people see that. I need to, if anybody's got any ideas, I'd love to hear them. And then sometimes with you all, I'm not sure, I mean, I know everything needs to go through Earl based on our type of government, but it will be, sometimes I'd like when I ask Lee, just kind of how we doing, what do you think, where we headed, or just outside the meeting hall. But I'm afraid to do that because, I don't want her to have to make a judgment call or whether she should say anything to me or not. So that's another one I really don't know how to answer either. But communication is something is my personal thing I want to improve on.
And Kevin, what I would say to answer that for you is that it's okay to start that conversation with Ms. Compton, but at the same time, it should be started with Earl. They've just communicated in writing that it should be to both of them. And then I've sort of encouraged the city manager that when he reports things to the mayor, he's not reporting things to the mayor, he's reporting things to all five of us. And so we've all got to continue to strive for that, because it's just like if it's good for Carter to know the answer, it's also good for all five of us to know the answer. Whether it's a yes or a no, we still need to all know that answer. And I think we've really gotten a whole lot better at those types of things, but
Yeah.
staff is used to working in a situation at City Hall where if someone above the city manager asks a question, it may be perceived as job threatening, maybe it's perceived as being us trying to kick the can down the road without the city manager being involved. I think we're past that, but I think we've got to be patient to the fact that staff doesn't realize that we're trying to get past that. So it's about bringing the staff along with this trust factor as well. Earl and the city commissioners disagree on a lot of things, probably all the time. We just don't do it in public.
Well, to be clear, I had a wild idea this week, and I just tried to come up with definition to the idea, and I talked to one of you and talked to another, and I just said, that's a stupid idea. And so I'm just not bringing it up ever again.
Well, and it might not be,
And so
it might not be
like,
stupid, you just don't have to.
I see the value, but you got to understand that
Yeah.
you all do tell me no. Like, I do appreciate that. Like, and I do, there's a lot of things I don't do because I do get that feedback.
And we tell you no very professionally. We don't say it's a stupid suggestion. At least I don't, but it's
We
important to have that
think
give
it,
and
but we
take.
don't say
Yeah,
it.
it just-
You just
well,
roll your eyes and then be nice.
And it's important to have that give and take. And what I do, anytime I go out and do a presentation and talk about our government, I get their attention by saying that the city commission and the mayor only hire a couple of people. That's the city manager, and we also can fire the city manager. We only hire the city attorney, and we can fire the city attorney. We don't want to do that, but that's the extent of our employment responsibilities, and they're all shocked. The mayor should give John Doe a job because he asked the mayor for a job. So it's about that effective communications. When I get the emails that I get, I always reply back to the person and say, thanks for sharing this with me. I am sending it on to city staff. And then in my reply, I'm blind copying the city staff that's receiving it, because I don't want them to know who I'm sending it to. But it's about getting the word out to everybody. And when it's appropriate, the city manager will share with all of us, because there's no sense in sharing with all of us the little bitty things that somebody reports about the pothole in their driveway is cracked and needs to be repaired. But it's those major things that I think, the larger things that the five of us need to be sure that we're all informed of or informed about those major things.
And I just want to tell the mayor, I appreciate how often you're in public. I hear all the time, just even at the store, JH was here, JH was there. And I think that's really helped city communication about what we're doing. So thank you. All sorts of crazy places. You're everywhere. So thank you.
It's that huge salary that I receive here. I always remind them. And in the workroom there, anytime I get a correspondence, if it's a thank you note or whatever, I try to put it on the table for you all to read. And then after a couple of days, I stick it on our little wall back there. That's for, I always say for the city commission eyes only, but it's really anybody's eyes. But it's that. But staff needs to understand, and I say this every time I go someplace, folks are fortunate in this community to have a highly trained, highly skilled, and highly experienced staff working for this community at all levels. And they're not used to hearing that. And what I'd say to staff is that, man, I don't get any complaints as a mayor about, it took 5 guys on city staff to change the light bulb on the corner the other day. You used to get all kind of crazy. We saw 5 guys out there stand up on break at a certain place. Don't get any of those kinds of complaints anymore, but when I do get them, I address them. Our city employees have a right to take a break. And that stops all that kind of drama.
Earl, do you want us to, like, email you some ideas, or are we gonna meet again on this
I like the
particular
idea
topic,
of
or-
opening a meeting, the next one probably, when we
Okay.
get into one of the first couple numbers meetings are fairly short too. I like the idea of really doing it, and I'm glad to hear that y'all want to do that, is trying to do a deeper dive into the strategic plan. I had it out to highlight, and I actually started that process a couple times, and then was like, well, I'll wait till after this meeting, just see what you all want to do. I do think that's a good idea, and we'll try to figure out a way to do that, so that it's efficient. If you all do, we did make you a copy of it, so get back through it and familiarize yourself. There was originally the notes that are a little bit more thorough that was produced from the meeting where you all spoke. I may pull those back out. I've looked at those. Those are, so there's a lot of things in there that didn't necessarily, that were summarized into one bullet point in the actual document there may have been 3 comments on that subject. I found that interesting when I went back and looked at that again. So we may try to assemble some sort of presentation out of that to open the next meeting and talk through that, because I do think that's a good idea. But again, I do want to emphasize, that operational things. What do we, like I said, I know, I feel the pressure to improve code enforcement. Like we acknowledge that. But are we structured correctly? We've made a lot of changes. We put code enforcement under the police. We feel like that's effective, got an opportunity to be sustainable that way, that just like we did the alcohol inside of the police department. That's a good decision. We've created a utility administration so that those folks are working directly with Marshall. And why is that important? Well, because he's got to get the field guys connected to those folks in order to do their job. So you can't have 2 different department heads trying to do a single task, right? So that we felt like all those changes that we've made so far, and I know that we've talked about structurally how we change things like 911 in the future. How do we do some of those things differently? We've talked about some of those things, but what is staff missing outside of the building? What are we missing that you all want us to dive into operationally? Too, keep that in mind.
Well, and I think another area of success that I oftentimes forget to talk about is that not only have we increased salaries and benefit employees in most departments. And
That's true.
And we've done that with maintaining a very sound financial statement,
Yep.
financial position. But we don't brag about or talk about those things too often. In one of my presentations, I was asked 2 things. Does the city manager ever gets evaluated? And if so, by who? Of course, that was an easy one. But the other one was that, what about the water department, how it continues to grow? And about our water services, how they continue to expand. And that was an easy one also, but because oftentimes we don't inform folks. We don't brag about stuff. We just inform people about what we're doing. And sometimes in communicating, we don't do enough of that.
I know we talked about it before, having like a quarterly just community meeting to let the community know what we've been doing and what we plan to do and hear what's on their mind.
One of the things that we've never talked about is, do you have those at a venue like a restaurant
Another site, yeah.
or at the coffee shop? Do you have
Yeah.
something like that somewhere where folks feel like that they're comfortable?
Yeah, I think that'd be preferable if it works.
Yeah.
Don and I went to the Kiwanians meeting, and it was at. Oh, was you there too? Oh, okay, next time. You didn't buy me a meal, okay. Well, anyway, Kevin and Donna and I went to that one, and I felt like that was really a nice setting because they all ordered their food, and the food was being delivered, so they were sort of eating while I was doing the presentation. But then I tried to drag Donna and Kevin into the presentation, and they themselves, I think, began to ask and feel more comfortable about asking questions and stuff. So if we were to do that and say it's our own, I've been doing what I call listening sessions. I want to go out and just listen to people, but they don't want me to listen. They want me to do a presentation first, then they'll ask questions and stuff, and that's okay.
Public hearings in a room like this aren't well attended anymore. But I do think that there's probably a good idea in there that we could let Melanie see what she can make hay with, because she's talented with things like that.
I
Yeah.
did like our meeting. I think it was, there wasn't a lot of people there, but the one we had in the basement with the staff, with their bullet points, I think that gives the community an opportunity to see people behind the jobs, not just hear about, well, we got this department, and, that we're telling them what they do. I think it's important that the community sees our police department, they interact with them and the fire department and the finance, and they see what's going on behind the doors.
Yeah.
I think that's transparent, and I think it was good. It wasn't well attended, so maybe that could be,
Melanie is working on, and I don't know if
Yeah.
she's talked to you guys about it,
Yeah.
haven't seen it yet. It's not exactly the same, but I think it's the same concept, and
Right.
maybe it'll provide a little bit better attendance and participation from the citizens. But it's a citizen engagement series where,
Right.
out of the extension office, where she's gonna lead different aspects of the city and talk about it, like, folks from the public sign up, to come to that and kind of learn about who we are, what we do, those kind of things. Because I do think it's important. We don't necessarily do that often enough, but like you said, it wasn't well attended, and I'm not sure that it wasn't because we didn't provide enough notice or
Right.
advertisement about it. I think it's just that kind of forum maybe maybe a more of a learning opportunity that she's creating will be a better forum for it.
that's sort of like the academy. We
Yeah, it's a
mentioned
little
that a
bit.
couple of years ago to say, hey, let's do that, because that was a thought, and it was
She,
like, let's
she
do
put out that ad, the
Right, I saw
notice on,
that.
okay.
I
Yeah.
saw that, but I mean, that's sort of what we talked about a couple of years ago, and I appreciate that's going forward. I just still think it was important to have it, maybe not downstairs, maybe somewhere else that's
no
a
doubt,
better
yeah,
site.
yeah.
And
So she.
more notice.
So we'll try to give her the floor at the commission meeting to talk about that a little bit more depth, and we'll do that Monday. I like that idea. I'm with you on that.
I mean, communication,
I still like the
Is
idea,
key.
though, the small venue stuff, too. We'll just have to figure out what that format looks like. And maybe it's not the full commission. Maybe there's just a couple of you go here and a couple of you go there, and treat it more like the Kiwanis presentation. Maybe it's a hybrid of the two with that.
it's
Yeah.
like, I had talked to Kevin, I guess, about, doing a coffee, I've been different places, and I want to do that, just to sit and say, hey, and all of us should want to do that, and just interact with the community to find out what's going on in their heads versus us just showing up every 2 weeks at a meeting.
Yeah, that's a good
Can't do
idea.
that.
Speaking of the series that Melanie's put together, the first one is, they're all on Thursday nights, and the first one's March the 27th. I think they start at 6 o'clock, and I have my calendar open to the first one because I need to get one of you guys to do the Government 101 presentation for Melanie
Yeah.
that night. I have another engagement.
But and I'll keep talking about communication, but just like seeing the police officers, if they had coffee with the community, I don't know if they do that, they may already do that, or any department, just to say, these are the guys that put sidewalks in, or here's our water plant, Anyway, I'll get off of that, but I think
Well, no,
communication is
that's-
key
yeah.
with everything,
And I think a lot of things that we're talking about, I hate to use that word, but that disease, pre-COVID, a lot of things were taking place, a lot of community-type meetings taking place, and then we just got stopped. The Women's Network, for example, has survived and continues to have meetings, but a lot of other organizations have them anymore because they stopped, and we had more and more opportunities to do those types of things. Tuesday night, planning and zoning was the subject of the Women's Network thing. I was lucky enough to show up. Kayla did a great job. Somehow it got out that she was leaving, but that was okay. They got past that. But that was another example. There's about 25, 30 people there. They were sitting down very comfortable. They had their little coffee, whatever they had with them, and had a real nice dialogue. She did about a 10-minute presentation, and the rest of it was just open dialogue. And I felt like they did a real good job. And I didn't have to say anything. All the questions that I thought were going to be directed at me, she addressed them. So, but I agree, we need to do some more of that. Yeah. So the 27th of March, you 40 to show up for Melody and talk about. It's the series that she's doing about our form of government. She has a fancy name for it, though, but.
Could she email us the information? That would be good.
Yeah.
Then we can participate.
And see, watch this, cut this off.
You know, reading this and thinking about the things we've done over the last few years,
Okay.
we're in a pretty good place, actually. I mean, there's,
Yeah.
even operationally, I think we're
Yeah.
pretty efficient and have a pretty good vision of what, where we want to go. But it's, you know, it always needs to be tweaked and other things that might pop up, but I'll defend what we've done for the last several years with anybody.
Yeah.
You've touched from a personnel perspective, you've really touched a lot. You know, you've reorganized some things, you've addressed compensation in a significant way that really has put us on a good, I think, a stable platform. You see that in our retention numbers. Your benefits are strong. Randy's going to have that on the agenda Monday. Our health insurance is looking like it will only be, and I say this only, you know, in the $400,000 to $400,000 range of a jump. So that's the beginning point for us. If you all confirm Monday that's the path we want to go down for right now. As we start the budget process, that's where we'll start. But we do have to, that is coming Monday. We do have to confirm that agreement with our next year's health insurance. But you've addressed benefits, you've addressed holiday, you've addressed, you know, one of the conversations that I want to have, and Randy and I are talking about, is dealing with the sick leave for your tier 3. That's a big deal. That's actually an important thing to be in front of that for your workforce. And so we're talking through how can we, what can we do there different? We've talked about, you know, do you propose, what's it called, a holiday where, you know, you pick which holiday it is. Floating holiday, yeah, I couldn't think of the word. It's a hard word, floating, right? You know, is that something you want to talk about? I mean, just, you know, we are, to Randy's credit, I mean, taking the time to meet with every department, listening to every employee through the HR perspective, not with the city manager there. He goes, and the department head, and they work through it, they hear complaints, they hear positive, and Randy tried to boil those down for you. If you go back to that presentation a few weeks ago, and there's a couple good ideas in there that staff is identified, and we want to see if we can implement those. You know, we're trying to figure that out.
Are they going to participate in something like this as well? I mean, I'd be interested in kind of what they think.
Well, that's
At
kind of
some
what the
point.
town forum is for
Okay.
Randy, so that's what those are.
Okay.
I would love to do a more interactive thing with the management team, with the full commission and us, brainstorm. What we've found in the past is when we go to those events, we just don't really get deep enough into it.
Yeah.
You know, we stay too high a level. But that is something I'd like to figure out too. I don't know exactly which point I don't necessarily know that impacts you from a budget perspective, but it does impact what we think about as staff. It impacts because we need direction. We need true north. You know, we need to know what direction we're going philosophically, those things.
I think that is also where we come back to, I want to hear from staff. I said that, we did last year a little bit more, but I think we all want to hear from them and them to be able to be open and not worry about maybe something, and I'm not saying that, but that they would worry that they would say something that would be contrary to
To a commissioner
thought.
or a thought that we had
a
had
thought you
espoused.
had in a, management
Right.
team meeting.
Totally
And
true.
you just want them to know, we want to hear from them. We want to know what's going on because they run the departments,
Correct, right.
And now that we have such a good team, I definitely want to hear from them because we want to retain them
Right.
and know that they're supported. And how can we support them better as we start this budget season?
because we've done some things, like you said, the compensation but you have to keep moving forward. You can't sit there and sit for 5 years and then, oh, well, we got to do it again. So you got to keep on that track to move forward and keep it going forward.
That's that growth mindset that we're talking about, 100%.
Well, Earl and fellow commissioners, I believe we're headed in the right direction, and I think we keep moving. But as we all know, and you made that statement, we've got to not forget where our weaknesses are, if we can find any of those, and try to improve on them. End of that statement. Got a question.
All right, go ahead.
How do you want to comment on our relationship with the EDC, the city's relationship with the EDC? It seems like that group has always been kind of elusive and secretive. And if we're going to try to help move our economy forward, I think we need to be involved a little bit more.
The EDC or the Development Corporation?
Yeah. Well,
Which one?
The
EDC is a
EDA or
development.
the Development
Oh,
Corporation,
the
yeah.
develop-
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So the mayor and Donna are on the board.
Yeah.
And, I think as a community, so taking me out of, my traditional role and just observing the community is transitioning towards that model being leaning into that board. It will always be in a transition mode, and it has been since, for 35 years. Economic development, that's a quick moving industry and world. So I think communication from, and Donna's here, I think communication from the mayor and Donna representing what action and activities are happening at the EDC may be helpful. So maybe we need to and I know you're sitting over there, Donna, but maybe we need to have you guys be during city manager report or something, talk about the EDC's activities a little bit. But two, though, it goes back to what I said on the one slide, and you'll get a PDF or you have it. The economic development is different, and it's migrating quickly. And I think the EDC board structure is correct, but in terms of the activities that you're doing, if you're recruiting a business here, that is like Chick-fil-A, that is really a city issue. But when you're recruiting an industry here, the industry isn't looking directly, they're looking at the site in Danville, but they're looking at a radius for the workforce. That is by nature in today's society, a regional recruitment. And I don't know that communities all too often, when we did that KAED thing, not the one in E-Town, but when we went to their annual meeting back in December, there more and more you see communities still trying to recruit against each other when the corporations and site selectors aren't doing that. And we don't want to fall into that groove of continuing that same old practice. If the world of economic development is changing, we want to make sure that our mental approach to economic development is changing with it in order to make us more effective. So that's a complicated subject, but I think just in simple terms to address your question, and I know I went off on that subject, but maybe we ask Donna and the mayor to report back from the board meetings more regularly.
I agree, because when Jenny was on it, and maybe it's my fault, but it seems the commission just sort of falls back and doesn't understand what's going on, or you don't know what's going on unless you're on that committee. So I think that, even if the mayor or if Rick is on a committee that he goes to regularly, I think they should give an update to the full commission. I think it might help our communication better if, he's always going to parks, and I know he brings it up, but it would be nice to have an update, maybe.
I think that we have always leaned into the idea that the executive director needs to be the one making the presentation, but I really feel like that you guys as board members are more effective in making that presentation back to the commission and reporting back to the larger group, because you all are all in the same boat with what your all's role is in relationship to the EDC, although you guys are the appointed representatives. So that's probably to Rick's point, probably a better way to communicate truthfully, than having that director come and talk about, various things. And I'm not saying they don't need to do that, but that's a quarterly meeting versus a weekly or every 2 weeks, or once a month.
Right, we have a meeting once a month, so,
Right.
we could give an update. I agree with that. I think we should.
Yeah.
I think Commissioner Peak's right on it, and I may have mentioned at the last meeting that, commissioner comments, we pretty much, pat ourselves in the back and say we had a great brass band festival, blah, blah, blah. Nothing wrong with that. But I should take more time to highlight what I saw at the Parks and Rec meeting.
Yeah,
Any-
and that's
any-
the correct location that's a
Yeah.
great point. That's the
Instead of,
correct location
instead of in
for
your
those.
report, it
Right,
should be our report back.
right. That's correct.
So instead of putting it on the agenda, wait for commissioner comments, does that sound?
That
Like,
sounds
do it
fine.
once a
That-
month to share?
I was just gonna say, I think as staff, we can also give you guys a reminder ahead of the meeting. Oh, hey, this meeting was held this month, maybe you didn't go, maybe, Mayor Atkins wasn't available and Commissioner Peak was there, or maybe Rick went to the Parks meeting this month, or depending on, we can help provide like just a reminder, oh yeah, you guys did go on this day.
So that needs to be worded commission update, not necessarily commission comments, yeah. Comments lends itself away from the business and more towards just things that you're seeing.
So that would be a new item.
Well, maybe we add to that agenda item. Maybe we call it commissioner updates / comments or something, just to trigger your mindset towards, hey, I got to give an update on what I'm working on.
I think that's a good idea to label it that way. I think one of the reasons we had commissioner comments was not only to pat ourselves or the community on the back, but to maybe elaborate on something we heard from the public. And yet, we don't want to do that. As the mayor always says, we're just listening. And so is the city staff. We're not going to make a comment, start stirring the pot. We just want to know where you're at.
But if you could bring items back that have been brought, say, I bring a comment to the commission in January, and maybe there is a resolution the city commission could at least address to the citizens to say, hey, we've looked at that, this is where we're at.
Yeah, so the comments that you get, it is rare that a city interacts with a hear the public situation. We are pretty liberal here with that interaction, even though we do designate it as hear the public and try not to necessarily respond. But we do, in situations where there's some folks that are seeking a resolution, what we as staff often do is we will go meet with them and we'll find whatever solution they're looking for, and then we'll just move right on. And you all never hear that outcome. And there's some of that we probably need to more be, specifically when it comes to something that is related to operations or a policy, we do need to follow up on that. That's a good thing to populate on the city manager report, that section, because I struggle with that sometimes. But I really, those citizens' comments on what our reactions
Yeah.
to them, that's probably a good thing that that's on me to be more cognizant to communicate there with those responses. That's the appropriate place.
What I think has been good, Earl, is for you or Stephen or whoever's involved, if you feel appropriate to make the comment, but not us. And you've done that, and I think it's very good to handle it right away. You know, we got the situation of a big leak in Streamland. Well, we're working on it, and they give the update immediately. I like that.
I mean, and I agree, going over this, you know, I have my little book still. So it's just, you know, to see where we are in like the Vision 20 or 2050, I guess. That's something I hope we look at deeper to bring the community in and see what they're thinking.
Just what we did with Tad.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry I yelled. I didn't mean to do that.
That's okay.
I want to make sure you could hear me. You're way over there.
Yeah.
You've actually given us a lot of homework. I mean, it's going to take time to go through here and see what's needed done. And then I look forward to hearing from everybody what we've heard from the public should be added at the beginning of our next meeting, so.
So next budget meeting is 2 weeks away?
Yes, sir.
Taking spring break
so we have
next
2
week or
weeks.
something? Okay.
Okay.
No, I don't know why we left one out.
I know.
There was-
I think it just,
That's the way the calendar fell. There was a sundry of things that,
I think
We
spring break
just-
is in April.
yeah,
So you'll
Yeah.
have another gap week in April.
right.
Okay.
So at the next meeting, what's the next budget meeting? I mean, we're gonna talk and have a time to speak out.
We will add this to the next
Okay.
budget meeting's agenda. We will add this discussion, a little bit more of this discussion. The year end, I think, is what we start with, and year-to-date, year-end stuff. And that's an efficient meeting anyway. Then we'll talk about revenue and get into the tax rates. There's not a lot of looking at what is happening in Frankfurt. We're really sitting quietly because we've gone through all the tax rates last year. And so we're really, I know, at least in my head, I'm sitting quietly on really talking about them because they're kind of set right now. We need to see what the state says. You know, the big low-hanging fruit that is essential for future operations of all the cities our size is the restaurant tax, frankly. The cities that people run around saying, well, why don't you have this and why don't you have that? Well, those cities have that revenue stream and they're using that money for that purpose that everybody wants. Saying that, I don't know when that is, but that's the thing that we're sitting there idle, kind of observing. So your tax rates, there's really not a lot to talk about necessarily with those other than once you know that you have revenue to fund operations next year, then that's going to kind of back into that conversation for the year we're in, honestly. So that's kind of where we're at on some of that initial stuff. So the pressure that we're feeling right now is, or that I'm feeling is, I want to make sure I'm getting feedback and getting direction from everybody. You know, and then, so we'll have this discussion at the start of the next meeting, and then we'll get into some of the numbers then. This is a very helpful discussion for us, right? We need this. We need more conversations than like this.
Have we thought about who we're gonna replace Lee with?
I'll find somebody good for you.
Okay.
Excuse my ignorance, and real quick, I know we want to, but I had one citizen say, well, you know, it'd be nice if you had the restaurant tax, but why don't you just do a sales tax? And I said, I don't know if we're doing that or if we can, I don't know.
We legally cannot issue a
Interesting. I wonder why he brought it up. I think it's because he moved here from another state and they could do it.
Right.
Yeah, lots of states have it.
And we went to Frankfurt, I mean, it is on their radar, you know, so the restaurant tax is.
Yeah, we appreciate you being
One
able
of
to
the
go.
thoughts of
And
restaurant tax is out there, so.
last
think
week,
there's a-
Kevin and Donna was able to go to Frankfurt
No,
last week
nothing.
and
No bill has been filed,
represent the city.
but, so.
So,
Oh, go ahead.
one more time, yeah. So, you guys want to say anything about your trip to Frankfurt? And I'd asked if you could bring up the conversation about KSD property, specifically the gym. Do you want to comment on that at all?
I don't know if we'll do it Monday or,
Doesn't matter.
go ahead.
We did, I think I mentioned to you before we started that we did mention it to both Amanda and Representative Elliott. I don't know why, his name shot out of my head. And Amanda was aware of the situation and agreed that it was a huge waste of resources just sitting there, you know, deteriorating bricks and mortar and a huge chunk of land that nobody can do anything with. But she also knows that more than one cabinet's involved. But I think she will help us as we go. We
I
can't
think that-
promise
I
anything.
think
We
that's-
have to continue to put pressure on that administratively. And that includes another round of letters that we got to send, and we got a draft of that revision, and we're going to do that. And so it's just communicating with those departments at the state. We're trying that process, and so that it can get across the desk of some of your folks that have the ability to vote and make decisions on those properties and to influence it at that level. So we're trying to nudge it up to them, and we've met with some of the folks out of the governor's office and met with some of the folks, like, appreciate you guys mentioning it to Amanda. And so we believe that ultimately when it's kicked up, eventually it will be, then we know that they're aware of it and they know they are educated on the value to the local community versus the value to KSD as an institution, given their current operations.
Yeah. And Daniel said he didn't understand. He didn't get the whole thing anyway, why there's no more classifications, but yet if they refer to it as those who formerly were of the third class or something,
Yeah.
it's, so I think he would help also, or at
Yeah.
least I got that impression.
We appreciate you all going, I mean, and I think that's great if we can keep kind of conquering and dividing in small groups, because you can't go to everything. Does anybody else have comments?
I'll move to adjourn.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay.